Hey Peyton, nice to see you again on this beautiful Sunday. This time with a quote by Michael Gerber, where he quotes, "The wisdom of the process is to begin it." Any thoughts on this?
You already know. Yeah, great quote. Michael Gerber is the guy who wrote The E-Myth Revisited, which is a little bit about taking a suppose business that is sort of like a job and turning it into a business that is sort of like an investment. And so this is primarily focused on a business mindset, but like many things, this applies to both business and personal life. And to me, the most important component of this that he's pointing to is the importance of a bias for action in our life, whether it's business or personal, blah, blah, blah. But it's really easy to get caught in analysis paralysis and trying to think and think and think and perfect and refine before it ever feels daylight or feels the real world. And trying to make something a little bit more perfect, a little bit more thought out, a little bit more thorough before it ever touches daylight, before it ever interacts with the real world or is accountable for any results, can be a strong temptation for all of us. And I think to some extent or another, we all slip into this at different ways, perhaps more or less so in different arenas of our life or even in different aspects of our business. But first and foremost, we need to have a bias for action if we want to accomplish things in the real world, which is obviously kind of goes without saying, but at the same time, this is something that I forget all the time, that a lot of people forget all the time, and especially in areas that are less comfortable for me. And so if there's something that I know I can do, I've done it before, it's simple, it's clear to me, the payoff is short term, it's going to be a quick, okay, here, there, succeed, dopamine hit, low risk, low vulnerability, all that. It's very easy to have a bias for action in these cases. But in cases where we're out of our comfort zone, we're trying to grow, we're doing something new, maybe we don't really understand everything about this, or we may feel that we have blind spots and don't know what we don't know. We haven't seen this in action before, and so it's difficult to have a clear vision of the payoff or of the time and payoff. Then there's several aspects of uncomfortability around it. There's aspects of vulnerability around it because fundamentally, if I'm putting something out there that I'm doing for the first time and that I haven't been refining and tweaking and blah 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 for a year, then it's going to have some errors. It's going to have some mistakes. It's going to have some faults, and it's going to focus a little too much on the wrong things. It's going to be out of balance in certain ways. And so it's putting myself out there, and it's going to be accountable to the real world, to results, to the opinions of others, to whatever. And so the temptation with things like this, and whether it's big or small, is to procrastinate. And procrastinate putting new systems out there, procrastinate doing um, shipping things, basically, as opposed to keeping them to ourselves, keeping them internal, keeping them within our minds, keeping them within our work in progress, instead of putting them out there and then refining them when they hit the real world. And so that bias for action, first and foremost, is so key to making progress because it's out there in the real world that we actually can effectively refine it. We can build something up to kind of an 80-20 MVP level within our own in our own desktop, but it's not until it reaches the real world that there's daylight on it and that we can see what are we really trying to solve, in what ways does this really attack the problem that we are trying to solve, and what ways does this solution miss the mark. And if we're doing a lot of analysis, just keeping it to ourselves, not putting it out there, which is the temptation to do, then it's not going to be able to improve at the pace that it could, and it's just going to slow our progress in general. Oftentimes we're better off with an imperfect solution than with no solution at all. But yet our minds and our comfort levels and our tendency to procrastinate causes us to bias ourselves in the wrong direction to avoid the short-term pain of shipping something out into the real world, sort of exposing ourselves and our work in some ways, having the risk of failure or the risk of or the cost of energy of doing something and making a change. So this is what I think he's calling out first and foremost with this quote, is that we need to have a stance that enables us and empowers us to just send it, to just create something that seems like it could work, put it out there, see the results, and then learn and adjust from what we actually discover with real feedback from actual real life. And that's at least one component of this. What are your thoughts around this quote?
A beautiful put, man. Especially the bias for action to produce results that you put out into the world, so you can gain feedback from the daylight which shines upon it, from real people who use it. Even if it's imperfect, you always can improve in the next step. And you cannot improve if you are paralyzed by your analysis and therefore optimizing maybe for the wrong target result, which you don't know when you put it out there, because the world is inherently complex, at least parts of it and the realms of the complex are complex, and therefore there's a lot of uncertainty about how the system will react given an output we put into it. And I view it through the lens as well, through the agile perspective, agile way of doing business, of leading teams, and of putting products out into the world. First, you have to observe what is there. Then you have to think about what is your target, what is your goals, and then you have to adapt your actions towards it. And I'm not talking about the world which is like complicated, like a cell phone tower connecting to your phone, where every bit goes back and forth, but every bit is really secured to be with a good heuristics, be the bit the 1 or the 0, depending on how it's coded. And I'm talking about the real world, the complex web of social relationships, the complex behavior of the markets, which move in a chaotic manner. And within this chaos, we have to think about our options and about the next best step we can take to move towards our goals. First, we have to be clear about what our goals are. Then we have to judge the options we have, and then moving the next best step. And because it's a complex world, the complex web of social relationships, we do not know what will happen if we put in the action, if we do another step, if we call out what we feel, what we think about a thing. It is this evolving kind of structure which only reveals itself, which only reveals the next possible options if we do the next step. Otherwise, it will stay put. Otherwise, it will not reveal any new kinds of information which we can use to adapt our actions and our inputs and our outputs. And this is, in a sense, the agile perspective I have on it. We have to put in the next step. We have to do the next increment. We have to put something out, even if it's not a final result, even if we are not ready yet for looking at it as some kind of really finished work. In order to generate feedback from potential user groups, from potential other options, to generate the feedback, to take it in and compare it to the target results we want to achieve, to be able to adapt our actions and generate new information through putting something new out there, a new increment.
100%. Yeah, I find that I do myself fall into this in certain aspects of my work, and I notice that it happens in especially the areas where I feel least equipped, where I feel least confident or least expert. And for me, this is a lot of like systems, process, organization, these sort of checklists and things like that. I tend to be very allergic to rules, allergic to scripts, allergic to writing things down, allergic to documentation. This is not my comfort zone. And so I've noticed in myself a lot of times I'll create some new process for, okay, this is how, for example, I created this new process for, okay, when we answer the phone at work and somebody's calling to inquire about this product, this product, this product, this product, or this product, we want to ask a few different questions and go through a sort of different process on the phone depending on which one. I created that over a month before I rolled it out to my team. And a part of it was because I felt out of my comfort zone. I didn't know if I was doing this right or what sort of result this would be. But two, it's it can be high energy to push for change, especially knowing that it's going to be imperfect. We're going to have to iterate, blah blah blah. There is maybe some parts of this are not going to work well, and there's an energetic leaning into it as opposed to procrastinating. That's important to recognize in ourselves and kind of be intentional about. There's this friction that we experience with doing new things or doing things out of our comfort zone or doing things that we don't love or trying to advocate for new changes with people that can sort of deter us, or maybe today's not the day and then today's not the day again, today's not the day again. And but the truth is that processes can accumulate, they can compound, just like other things can accumulate and compound, but they do so in a more invisible way. At least to me, it tends to be a more invisible way. I was reflecting on this recently, and we created this past few months a bunch of automations in our business and our marketing funnels to the point where now automation is handling maybe 40% of the work of our marketing funnel as it relates to people inquire, and then we reach out to them and then we get them scheduled for things, or after we've given somebody a price we follow up with them and blah blah blah. And that's the equivalent of maybe, I mean, we probably have 20 to 30 hours of labor per week now that's just purely automated. And and that's labor that otherwise maybe that costs 15, 20 bucks an hour or something like that. And that's just the first stage. It's tremendously valuable. And it's value that will always be there for us. And then we can build upon it and do more and more and more in terms of these systems, processes, automations. But that value is not in my checking account. That value is something that's built, put in place that we can build on and compound, but it's sort of invisible equity. And so these processes, these systems are examples of things with very long-term payoffs, but short-term they're painful, kind of, or at least very uncomfortable and vulnerable to lean into. And so our bias as human beings, if we have one path that is, okay, this is short term, this is comfortable, I don't have to put myself out there, nothing really will happen, and I'm not gonna miss this automation that I didn't do yet because it's just, I've never seen it, nobody's ever seen it, and so it doesn't feel like I'm losing something by delaying this or procrastinating this or kicking this off or just not doing it at all, whatever. This other route, this is very short-term painful because I'm not comfortable. I don't want to learn this. I'm out of my comfort zone. This isn't my strength. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have a clear vision of even what this will look like. I don't know for sure if it'll work. Even in the best case, I'm definitely going to be making mistakes when I'm rolling this out, and it's going to put my lack of perfection into clear, visible daylight for everybody that I'm trying to lead. So clearly my human mind is going to be biased toward procrastinating, taking the easy way out, not shipping the system, blah blah blah, especially because the payoffs and benefits of doing this, these are long term. Even if I do lean into this and roll this out, it's going to be more work than it is benefit for the first month at least. And so it's yet another example of making short-term decisions or making long-term decisions. And what's important to understand is that making a habit of focusing on these long-term decisions and leaning into what we don't feel like doing in the short term, instead facing this short-term discomfort and pain, this enables us to build things that compound and accumulate. This enables us to have this sort of invisible equity that is very invisible. Like, it's not going to show up in my P&L next month necessarily, or not in a way that's really moving the needle in a visible way. But if I build these processes and automations, and I build one per month or some portion of the big picture per month in terms of a system or a process or an automation, over time, these things do stack on each other. This isn't going out and catching a fish. This is actually setting up a net that will catch fish for me over time. And the more of these that I can lay out there, the more fish that are just going to enter into the net, so to speak. Imperfect analogy, but making these long-term decisions and facing this short-term discomfort over and over and over and over as a matter of habit, as a matter of our biased approach to just take action to build what we want our system or our process or organization or whatever to be. Once again, this includes personal life. This is not just in entrepreneurship, but this is in many things. This is how we can create something of value, of growth, that ends up being, after we take all these punches and lean into whatever, eventually these things are what build momentum, where I don't feel like I have to go out and spearfish my next fish anymore. I can focus my time on go building another net once I have my nets sort of feeding me my day's meal. And so this is how this is a part of how momentum is built over time in our personal life or our business. Is a part of the sensation of, instead of the wind being at our face, feeling like we're fighting to tread water, and we're sort of struggling very slowly through facing short-term discomfort. We can accumulate more and more wind in our sails that has the sensation of, we have the momentum, the inertia at our back in the way that we want it, and we've built this boat that can help propel us forward, instead of feeling like we just have to spend all of our time struggling and paddling. At least that's the idea in the very, very long term. But this requires a lot of short-term discomfort as a habit, as a matter of regular conducting ourselves and our priorities. But this is, in my view, a lot of how we can build enduring, sustainable value that can accumulate, as opposed to just going out and catching another fish day after day, and having this sort of hand to mouth, where we're always trading effort for immediate results, as opposed to the immediate results coming and our effort being focused on building the results that come to us. That's my philosophy around this, generally speaking. What are your thoughts?
It's a beautiful lens to view it as a procedural asset. Like the quote, the wisdom of the process is to begin it. Also, build up the momentum through taking the time and investing in building up system which can be automated by themselves, which can take labor off of your shoulders, which are assets because they are meant to stay and to be slightly adjusted to the changing environments, but to stay and to build upon them, to even compound, as you said. And this is a beautiful lens through which we can look at this quote as well. Another thought which comes to mind when I think about this quote, beginning a process. For me, sometimes processes are like these iterating loops over and over and over through. For example, I've been to the firefighters militia a few years ago, and did the training to become a firefighter there. And there's this simple heuristic of moving in a complex environment which is changing, like a burning building, with traffic around the streets and so on. And the heuristic goes like that. First, look and observe, then think what to do about it, and then act. And this is one one thing I learned there, because I just I took the trunk and I run, and then I looked around and I saw then I thought, oh, I'm in the wrong direction. This is where I really incorporated that heuristics and the step by step, following it, the algorithm step by step in the right order is really important, because otherwise you are running in the wrong direction, as I recognize doing myself. So it's the beauty is in iterating through the complex world, through taking in the new information which you gain through taking the next step, making a new model out of which you see and say, okay, when I do this, maybe this will happen. When I do that, likely this will happen. And thinking and judging about the models being applied, and then judging what next best step you want to take, and which would more likely produce the results which are beneficial for you or the organization you are within and trying to serve society with. Therefore, this heuristic look and orient yourself and then think about it and then act also applies good to other chaotic situations like in wartime where we cannot model anything, any outcome. We do not know what will happen because it's such a complex environment. So we have to just think about the next best step after we've taken in everything we could take in and then making some thoughts about it, judging the models, and then approaching the next step.
It's a beautiful framework. Yep. And an important order of events, and it's important to not forget the third step, which is to actually act. So with that in mind, may we make long-term decisions, lean into short-term discomfort in order to accomplish the mission, have a bias for action and an ability to embrace discomfort, put ourselves out there, ship something that we know is imperfect with the idea of shining daylight on it so that we can improve it to the best of our abilities. And yeah, I wish you a great week. Thank you as always for the thoughts and the conversation. Enjoy talking about this, and I will see you next week, my friend.
See you next week, my friend. Bye, Peyton.
Bye bye. Take care.